The behaviour graph, so-called, is something is really important because, in a way, programmatic was born of ad networks, then behavioural targeting and so on. It just does it quicker. But you need to know more and more about what kind of sites people are browsing on, where they're coming from, where were they before they came to this site, where were they showing that intent, and what behaviours did they take on that site. I mean, most people here are probably involved in site retargeting at some point. Site retargeting is a business that we're in, and there's a lot of money to be made in site retargeting, and there's a lot of value to be got back by retargeting your site visitors. But how many of them really are ever going to buy? There's loads and loads of people going to websites who will never buy the things available on that website ever. And you as a marketer, you want to make damn sure you don't keep marketing to them, because a lot of things are going to happen. Certainly you're going to annoy them, but also we're remarketing to people who've already bought the product. I mean, I bet everyone here has that happen to them, where you go and buy some jeans on Gap, and then Gap keep remarketing the same jeans to you, sometimes at a discount. It's nuts, and they're ruining your relationship with that brand. So you have to use that site behaviour data very intelligently to edit out who you're going to retarget and why, or change the message, upsell them. Don't just keep battering them to buy the thing they've just bought, obviously. Anyway, social graph, that's coming into it now. You can use DMPs in a very, very clever way to understand what people's behaviours are around your actual brand. And then purchase graph is beautiful because if you can actually understand what kind of purchase behaviour a person has, it's an incredibly important signal that will adapt how you want to market to them. So going back to the idea of business flights, I mean, this could be anything, it could be buying shoes, whatever, but going back to that, this is how we believe at Chango programmatic is done best. This is the consumer that we're deciding to target. All of this is taking place in 40 milliseconds. This is just one person out of hundreds of thousands that we're going to decide to target or not in this campaign. Let's say the search intent was the thing that we saw first. We saw the search for flights to New York. We could just go and target the person based on that, but that's not really actually intelligent enough, and it's definitely not making the best of the data, and it's not giving you the best chance of economically getting the result you want as a marketer. So we're going to look at a lot of other signals that person has left on the internet. We don't work with demographic segments, but we can back out into demographic indicators. So, where are they? What kind of, income bracket, AB1 type of definition do they sit under? And we can look at their purchase data if we can see it, the social data, and all the other points there. And that person is scored on each one of them in real time. And that's where the algorithms come into their own. We're going to miss them if we try and do that in a human manner. And that's also where you have to have live data. There's no point doing this with old data because that person's window for buying a flight or a pair of shoes is probably an hour, right? So you've just got to do it now. And that's the kind of crux of programmatic in a way. It absolutely has to be real time. By looking at those signals and scoring, then you can get a good sense of where that person is in the funnel. Programmatic kind of started out really as a direct response ecosystem, and it's grown way beyond that. So, certainly we can, and a lot of other vendors out there will run full funnel campaigns. You don't have to do a full funnel campaign. You can just decide to do something that is a brand awareness piece at the front. So you might choose to use, Twitter and video or something like that to get a strong personalised message in front of a consumer and get them just thinking about a product. But, if you're going to look at that shopper, you have to know where they are in the purchase funnel and how to apply your creative, your media techniques, and what price you want to pay to reach that consumer. And the bonus secret, if you like, is as much as you can, you want to take a single view of the consumer. I mean, if you're looking at the bigger agency groups or big clients, they're organised, there's a lot of people there, there's a lot of money at stake, they tend to organise in silos, which is an overused word, but if your social team is doing this thing over here with people in social, and you've got a branding team or a DR team over there, each team starts from a blank piece of paper when actually if they were sharing information about who they're marketing to and what's happening, you're going to see that these are actually all the same people. So you can save a lot of money, very simply. The other thing that's becoming really prevalent in programmatic. Now, there's a lot of people who've been saying this for years, but they've been sort of stretching the truth a bit. But it's the notion of cross-device targeting. It's still quite difficult to do it, but we're at a point where we can fairly accurately tell that the person that has just searched for something on that desktop is actually the person who's now on that iPad, who's now that person who's somewhere else but using their mobile phone. So you want to be able to reach that user sequentially. And if I've got time at the end, I'll paint a kind of picture of that with an actual example. But it's quite possible, and now that Facebook Exchange is opening up a little bit, and you can bring data from outside of Facebook, for example, into that ecosystem, but you can also see the logins, so you know for sure that that person on the desktop is that same person on a mobile phone with 100% accuracy. It's starting to get to be a very, very interesting scenario for reaching people in a flow advertising way. So there's a lot of data, there's a lot of devices, there's a lot of people out there. So what you need is a machine that kind of does everything in one go. I think this is starting to happen more, but up to this point, there's a lot of data management platforms, a lot of DSPs. They're not necessarily built from the same structure. So often you're putting together two things that weren't built to talk to each other, which creates a lot of latency. And in many cases, there's quite a lot of old data being used. So if you just bring in segment data into a real-time bidding scenario, you can't see intent. You're just going for a big, broad group of people who may or may not want the thing. So it's not really true programmatic. So it's crucial that all this data that's coming in is managed and sorted in the same place as where you're going to buy from, in terms of the sort of platform. That's the only way you can do it live, and it's the only way you've got the best chance of capturing intent and then putting a message in front of them milliseconds afterwards if it's relevant. And then obviously you want to make sure you've got lots of different inventory sources too. If you manage to do all of that, you'll get this. So I was just looking at some of the campaigns we've run at our company, at Chango, and picked out ones where it was advertisers that were sort of newish to programmatic. There's quite a few big brands that have been doing programmatic for a long time, but there's also an awful lot of companies coming and trying programmatic. And what we see often, actually, and I'm sure it's the same for other vendors and some of you as marketers, you try something, it works, but then what the clients are having to do is they're having to go back and build a proper attribution model to cope with it, because it's quite disruptive to the older ways that they were doing stuff. So we see a lot of people coming into the market, dropping out for 6 months as they sort out their attribution, get involved with a tag management company and so on, and then they come back and go large. But yeah, I mean, click-through rate, 0.78%, it's not 44% like we saw at the start, but this is good now for display, given that everyone knows that people don't necessarily go on and click on ads that much. But far more interestingly is metrics like engagement rate lift for a brand campaign. In this case, that was bringing data from outside of Twitter into a Twitter environment to only target users within Twitter based on their external intent signals, which gave huge lift compared to just doing it with inside Twitter, just with the Twitter data. That's very good. Obviously, lovely examples where the CPA, cost per acquisition or cost per lead, has been massively reduced by having better data and faster speed to consumer. And what we see with programmatic as well, if the data is good, is that you can convert people a lot quicker, because basically you don't need to keep buying cheap inventory just hoping for the best. You can make a more targeted purchase, knowing full well that you've got a much higher chance of converting that user overall. So these are some of the results you can see, expect to see if you come into programmatic. I've sort of lost track of time, but I'm going to finish up by looking at a few predictions for 2015. Sorry? Including. Okay, cool. So a few predictions. We publish every year our marketing and programmatic predictions. Here's 5 of them for you now. Prediction 1. Programmatic advertising will be understood by the majority of marketers. I asked at the start of this, does anybody is familiar with programmatic? Not so many hands went up, but hopefully this has made some difference. But we're seeing now that 2/3 of marketers are now using programmatic in one form or another, and that's going to continue to go into 2015, and we very much hope so. Viewability and ad fraud won't be entirely eradicated, which is probably not a surprise. I mean, there's certainly in the news a lot at the moment. There's been some quite nasty examples of it linked to certain companies. What that highlights, though, is the scale of the issue, right? I was at an event a couple of weeks ago, and there was a really good panel on this, and one of the guys on the panel was like a COO of quite a big advertising company, so a real technical guy. And he'd looked into this, and he said everyone in the audience could go home now, download some malware, and be making about £100 a day out of creating bot traffic by this evening. I mean, it's that easy to do. I'm not suggesting you do it, but it really is that easy to do it. And there's some really nasty things coming out in this where people can even now fake a purchase by using stolen credit card details, and that's quite a worrying development. So there's a lot of work needs doing by the industry to get over this problem. But there's a lot of technology out there and partners that you can work with to get rid of or reduce the risk of ad fraud and bot traffic, and good vendors will have their own algorithms that are sorting this out anyway. But that's not a problem that's going to be solved next year. This is probably my favourite piece, is the brand marketing dollars coming into programmatic in quite a significant way now, as people realise that it's not only a direct response kind of ad network environment. The data is very, very powerful. And we've seen this with work we do with a lot of bigger brands who aren't transacting online, but they're using the direct response kind of tactics and data available in the programmatic ecosystem to run a branding campaign. So if you think about TV, you're sort of buying quite broad segments on television to do branding, and that's well and good if you're Coke or someone like that. But if you're a slightly smaller brand, you don't want to reach everyone. You need to be more careful with your money, and you can achieve that in programmatic very nicely with looking at intent signals and inferred segment participation, and then run a video campaign or Twitter campaign only to those people, and you'll see those kind of uplift stats that I showed before, or brilliant completed video view rates, because people are genuinely interested in that piece of advertising because they're in market for, I don't know, a flight or a video game or whatever it might be. And that's exciting. I mean, 45% of display budgets are programmatic this year, and it's estimated that 68% of display budgets will be programmatic next year, and there's no way that's all direct response money. This slide, marketers will want to get closer to the data, for sure. We've seen this where some of the big companies in the UK, like Tesco's and so on, have actually bought kind of programmatic or social type companies so that they can really own that whole piece themselves. In the States, we hear a lot about the States because we're a very big operation over there. Really big, grocers, online retailers, they are often running the programmatic themselves now because they can cut out the middlemen, but it's their data primarily that powers this because they're very big on site retargeting. They can do it themselves. They just have to employ a programmatic team and use a platform, license a platform themselves. So marketers are, we all know how important data is, but we're not as close to it yet as we want to be. And finally, programmatic TV. I don't know if anyone's got an opinion on this, but I come from a TV background. There's a lot. The industry seems to think this is going to happen quickly. I personally don't believe that programmatic TV is going to kind of happen completely next year or in the next couple of years. But there are some good examples of TV buying going kind of real time. I wouldn't describe it as programmatic, but in Australia, I was just reading this week that I forget the name of the network, but one of the big Australian networks is partnered up with a programmatic company, and they're trading all of their TV spots in real time, and they're applying certain amounts of data to it as well. But over in the UK, I mean, the TV industry, as we know, is owned by a couple of very, very big players. They're not going to unpick the way they make a lot of money and just put it out to real-time bidding yet, I think. But, with Sky's AdSmart, we are seeing beginnings of that. So hopefully that's been reasonably useful to you. I've tried to go from sort of how we got to programmatic, what's important if you're going to undertake that. And we started off by looking at programmatic today. Here's just a quick video looking at programmatic tomorrow. well, that's me. That's my talk on programmatic. I've got a few copies of our magazine here if anyone wants to come and get one. And I'll very happily answer questions because I'd much rather have a chat than yell at you for 50 minutes anyway. So if anyone does have any questions, please fire away.